Thanks for the privilege of your time. My name is LEGRAND PARISIEN SALVANT. Welcome to the SALVANT report. To help you understand the world we live in, the SALVANT report has garnered information from several sources: New York Times, Foreign Affairs, Washington Post, Miami Herald, Le Monde Diplomatique, et to name a few. We use the most recent report to shed light on multiple events happening around the world. And as we continue to cover the international arena, today we're going to talk and share some information with you as it relates to what we call the end of the longest peace. And this was one of history's greatest achievements, and this peace is under threat. One of history's greatest achievement is under threat. The past 8 decades have been the longest period without a war between great powers since the Roman Empire. This anomalous era of extended peace came after 2 catastrophic wars, each of which was so much more destructive than prior conflicts that historians found it necessary to create an entirely new category to describe them. The historians call it world wars. Had the rest of the 20th century been as violent as the preceding 2 millennia, the lifetimes of nearly everyone alive today would have been radically different. The absence of great power wars since 1945 didn't happen by accident. A large measure of grace and good fortune is part of the story. But the experience of catastrophic war also compelled the architects of the post-war order to attempt to bend the arc of history. American leaders' personal experiences of winning the war gave them the confidence to think the unthinkable and to do what previous generation has dismissed as undoable by constructing an international order that could bring peace. To ensure that this long peace continues, American leaders and citizens alike need to recognize with an amazing achievement it has been. To realize how fragile it is, and to begin a serious debate about what will be required to sustain it for generations. Our title today is the end of the longest peace, one of history's greatest achievements, and it is under threat. And we said, and we repeat it again, to ensure that this long peace continues, American leaders and citizens alike need to recognize what an amazing achievement he has been. To realize also how fragile it is, and to begin a serious debate about what will be required to sustain it for another generation. The achievement, it is and it was a miraculous achievement. Three numbers capture the defining features and successes of the international security order. Eli, and 9. Three numbers capture the defining features and successes of the international security order. Eli, and 9. Number 1, it has been 80 years since the last hot war between great powers. This has enabled the global population to triple, life expectancy to double, and global GDP to grow 15-fold. Number 1, it has been 80 years since the last hot war between great powers. This has enabled the global population to triple, life expectancy to double, and the global GDP to grow 15-fold. If instead post-World War II statement has settled for history as usual, a third world war would have occurred. But it would have been fought with nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons. It could have been the war to end all wars. Number 2, it has been 80 years since nuclear weapons were last used in war. The world has survived several close calls, most dangerously the Cuban Missile Crisis. And with the Soviet Union and the United States face off over nuclear tip missile in Cuba, and during which President John F. Kennedy estimated the odds of nuclear war to be between 1 in 3 and 1 in 2. More recently, however, in the first year of Russia's full-scale war in Ukraine, talking about the invasion, which began on February 24th, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin seriously threatened to conduct tactical nuclear strikes. And so much so, according to reporting in the New York Times, the CIA estimated the odds of a Russian nuclear strike to be 50-50 if Ukraine's counteroffensive were about to overrun retreating Russian forces. It has been 80 years since the last hot war between great powers. Number two, it has been 80 years since nuclear weapons were last used in wars. In the 1950s and 60s, world leaders expected countries to build nuclear weapons as they acquired the technical capability to do so. President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, predicted that there would be 25 to 30 nuclear armed states by the 1970s, which led him to promote one of the boldest initiatives of American foreign policy. Today, 2025, 185 states have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, forswearing nuclear weapons. And remarkably, only 9 countries have nuclear arsenals. Like the early years of peace and the absence of nuclear wars, the non-proliferation regime, of which the treaty has become the centerpiece, is also a tenuous achievement. Do you know that more than 100 countries now, 2025, they have the economic and technical base to build nuclear weapons? 100 countries. And if Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, is able to advance his war aims by ordering a technical nuclear strike on Ukraine, other governments will likely conclude that they need their own nuclear shield. We are approaching very fast the end of an era. In 1987, the historian John Lewis Gaddis published a landmark essay titled The Longest Peace. It had been 42 years since the end of World War II. Back then, an era of stability comparable to that between the Congress of Vienna in 1815 and the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, and the decades after that until the outbreak of World War I in 1914. Gaddis, the historian, argued that the foundation of this modern long peace was the Cold War. In structural condition, that ruled in earlier eras almost certainly have led to a Third World War, the United States and the Soviet Union confronted each other with arsenals sufficient to withstand a nuclear strike and retaliate decisively. And nuclear strategists describe this as mutually assured destruction, or MAD, M-A-D. We are facing what now? The end of the longest peace. It has been 80 years since nuclear weapons were last used in war. It has been 80 years since we have a war between the great powers. 80 years of peace via an international security order. While we have 100 countries that have now the economics and technical base to build nuclear weapons, we have only 9. Even though we have more than 12,000 nuclear weapons around the world. 12,000 plus. But because in the 1970s, 1960s, with the President John F. Kennedy, who had promoted the boldest initiatives of American foreign policy, talking about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and 185 states have signed that treaty. Remarkably, we end up with only 9 countries with nuclear weapons. In addition to the establishment of the United Nations, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the multilateral arrangements that eventually developed into the European Union, and the fierce ideological dimension of the US-Soviet rivalry, the central causal factor for peace, Gaddis, the historian, argued, he said, was the mutual judgment that systemic interests trumped ideological ones. The Soviet hated capitalism, and Americans rejected communism. But their desire to prevent mutual destruction was more important. And the historian Gaddis went to explain the moderation of ideologies must be considered then, and along with nuclear deterrence and reconnaissance as a major self-regulating mechanism in post-war politics. As the historian Gaddis published that essay in 1987, titled The Long Peace, he recognized the world has split into two camps, in which each superpower sought to attract allies and allied countries around the globe. The US launched the Marshall Plan to rebuild Western Europe, established the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to promote global development. And the US pushed for the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade to set the rules of economic exchange to promote economic growth. The US even abandoned its prior strategy of trying to avoid entangling alliances, an idea that dates back to George Washington's presidency, by embracing the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and also a treaty commitment to Japan. We have seen that in setting this international security order, the US launched the martial law to rebuild Western Europe and established all these international organizations. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. All this, the US at the same time to build that international security order is just only in order for it to counter the threat of Soviet communism. As one of reporter from Foreign Affairs put it and explained it, he said, had there been no Soviet threat, there would have been no Marshall Plan and no NATO. Just the Soviet communism, just the Soviet threat push the American leaders to launch all these, to create all these. The international security order we have been enjoying for 80 years. And this historic greatest achievement is under threat. We have the new American president waiting what not to invade Venezuela, threaten Mexico, Colombia, Nigeria, just to name this. History's greatest achievement is under threat. It's just like we are approaching slowly the end of the longest peace. It has been 80 years since the last hot war between great powers. It has been 80 years since nuclear weapons were last used in war. And even though we thought more than 100 countries have the economic and technical base to build nuclear weapons. We end up, even unfortunately, with 9 of them with nuclear weapons. And the reason why we see that we haven't used it, and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, said he's threatened to use it, nuclear missile strike, based on his invasion of Ukraine. We haven't have any. It's based, according to the nuclear strategists, on that mutually, they call it mutually assured destruction, or MAD. We found out also that the foundation of the modern long peace was the Cold War. After the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, triumphalists hailed a new unipolar era in which only the US remained as a great power. This new order will bring a peace dividend in which countries could flourish without worrying about great power conflicts. And in the world of political scientist Francis Fukuyama, the world was witnessing the end point of mankind's ideological evolution and the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government. But these ideas inform the US invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, which left the US bogged down in endless, winless wars for 2 decades. Early years, when the last nuclear weapons was used in wars, 9 countries instead of 100 have nuclear weapons. But just like I said a while ago, more than 12,600 nuclear weapons were left outside of Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed. The longest peace, 80 years, we are witnessing, we are approaching, maybe very slowly or faster than we may imagine, to the end of that era. 80 years of peace, with an international security order that what now? It's under threat. The geopolitical changes after the fall of the Soviet Union has reset US relations with both its former adversaries and its growing challengers. In 2009, when Barack Hussein Obama was inaugurated as US president, both Russia and China were characterized as strategic partners. Not anymore. This remained the dominant view until the actual president of the United States came in. What are the dangers ahead? The dangers ahead. Since we are talking about the end of the longest peace, one of history's greatest achievements under threat. What are the dangers? We see that before his death in 2023, Henry Kissinger repeatedly reminded colleagues that he believed these 8 decades of great power peace were unlikely to reach a full century. Among the factors that history shows contribute to the violent end of a major geopolitical cycle, 5, according to Kissinger, stand out that could bring the ongoing long peace to a close. We're talking about early years of peace, but in 2023, 2 years ago, before his death, Henry Kissinger said that he thought that the 8 decades of great power peace were unlikely to reach a full century. That's been 100 years. Was it right? We are what now approaching the end of the longest peace. We have the American president threatened to invade Venezuela, Mexico, to bomb Colombia, to send troops to Nigeria, and we had 20 or 23 boats in the international water being missile out and killing at least 6 people or more. The 5 factors that Henry Kissinger talked about, at the top of the list is amnesia. He said successive generation of American adults, including every serving military officer, have no personal memory of the horrible cost of a great power war. Because they don't have any personal memory, is amnesia, so they are not thinking about it. The second factor is the existence of rising competitors. The existence of rising competitors also threaten peace. We got China, one of them, rising power. The third factor is the global economic leveling further increases the possibility of war. The global economics. Fourth is when established power also overextends itself militarily, especially in conflicts that rank low on a list of its vital interests. Its ability to deter and defend against rising powers weakens. Overextension of a military of a great power. When the army engages in protracted conflicts, the resources of the state will fall short. And the fifth factor, we have the fourth and the fifth factor for Henry Kissinger, finally, and most concerning, the tendency of an established power to descend into bitter political division at home paralyzes its ability to act coherently on the world stage. Which is that exactly that what we are witnessing in America. And it's most concerning than every other four factors that I mentioned. This is unfolding today in America. An ostensibly well-meaning administration in Washington is upending nearly every existing international relationship, institution, and process to impose its view on how of the international order must change. The last factor is most concerning. And what now in America, in US? We see the bitter political division at home, which would paralyze the US ability to coherently act on the world stage. Because you have an administration, it's unfolding what now? Today. An ostensibly well-meaning administration in Washington, it's upending nearly every existing international relationship, every international institution and process to impose its view of how the international order must change. And you may think that all the other countries, they are going to sit down right here and let this happen. It's a source of conflict. We are approaching the end of the longest peace. We have enjoyed 80 years without war between the great powers, 80 years without using nuclear weapons. And only now we have 9 countries instead of 100 with nuclear weapons. And it cannot be used because of what the nuclear strategies call mutually assured destruction, MAD. You have nuclear weapons, you can use it, I can use it, and then we destroy humanity. Now, we have a country that are destroying every existing international relationship, institution, process to impose its view. When is the same US 80 years ago, who launched the martial law plan to rebuild Western Europe, established the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to promote global development, and even push the general agreement on tariff and trade to set the rules of economic exchange while promoting economic growth. And now the same country who are embracing the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. And you have an administration, what now, what I'm talking to you, destroying every one of them. Long wave geopolitical cycles do not last forever. long-wave geopolitical cycles do not last forever. The most important question facing American and the divided U.S. polity is whether the nation, this nation, can gather itself to recognize the perils of the moment, find the wisdom required to navigate it, and take collective action to prevent, or more accurately, postpone the next global convulsion. Unfortunately, as Hegel observed, we learn from history this often that we do not learn from history. Repeat it. Unfortunately, as Hegel observed, we learn from history that too often we do not learn from history. Thanks for the privilege of your time. You have been with your brother, LEGRAND Parisien SALVANT, dans the SALVANT report. Have a blessed weekend. Thank you.